Chapter 28. The Inventors Fair was scheduled for 7th period the next day. Everyone in TAG got to skip 6th period to set up their inventions. I got to the gym after lunch and saw that decorations had already been put up all over the place. In the center of the basketball court, facing the bleachers, was a raised platform with a podium on it. Behind the podium was a line of chairs for the presenters, and already most of the members were setting up their inventions. It was my first time seeing their prototypes, and I felt nervous at first because they all looked kind of interesting. Angie had what looked like a black stick with a plastic claw attached to the end. Carson had a styrofoam box that he was putting a small sheet over to hide it. What was in that styrofoam box? Graham was sitting in his chair holding what looked like a normal toothbrush. Maybe he was planning on brushing his teeth right before the assembly? I took the corner seat and draped a blanket over it so they wouldn't see my project. Miss Schumacher was checking on all of us, sipping her tiny cup of espresso, and it amazed me that her little cup could make that entire gym reek like a Starbucks. That looks interesting, Carson, though you might want to go over the title on your poster one more time with the marker so everyone can see it, she said. How's your setup going, Peter? She peeked at my prototype and her eyes grew wide. Well, that looks very interesting. Care to offer any hint as to what it is? You'll know soon enough, I said. I'm proud of you. You showed real initiative working on your prototype even though you had to miss some classes. Just presenting it all today is an accomplishment. Well, I'm shooting for better than that, I said, and she patted me on the head. Usually I hate it when adults do that because it makes me feel like a pony, but this time I kind of enjoyed it. Sonny, are you ready? Sonny, Miss Schumacher asked. I looked over and saw my sister sitting in her seat, and her face was bright red. The yellow duffel bag in front of her was zipped shut. Why haven't you taken out your prototype? We only have a few minutes before it starts. I don't have one, Sonny said softly. Everyone's jaws dropped. What do you mean? You've been working on it all semester, Miss Schumacher said. I switched it at the last minute because my main idea wasn't working, but I couldn't get it done in time. She stared at the floor, and I noticed the bags under her eyes that made her look ancient. She was 20 or something. Well, maybe you could still present what you have so far. Let's see it, Miss Schumacher said, reaching for the duffel bag. No! Sonny pulled the bag away from her. I'm not presenting this afternoon. Miss Schumacher frowned at her. I'm very disappointed to hear this. You should have told me earlier. We could have helped you finish your project on time. Can I just turn something in by the end of the week? For a grade, yes, but I'm afraid the selection process ends today. You already knew that, though. This is so unlike you. Sonny's face turned redder. I don't care! She suddenly burst out, picking up the duffel bag and running for the double doors. Miss Schumacher called after her, but she was gone. She turned to us. Okay, the rest of you have your prototypes ready, and I expect you to do your best presenting them. Good luck, everyone. I couldn't believe it. I would have never guessed in a million years that my sister would crack under pressure like this. I didn't feel bad for her, though, because a second later it dawned on me that, with my main competition out of the way, I now really did stand a chance of winning this thing. The bell rang for 7th period, and we sat down in our seats. I could hear the pounding of footsteps and shouts and hollers outside, and a minute later the entire student body spilled in through the double doors and raced past us to the bleachers. It took a while for everyone to settle down before Miss Schumacher went up to the podium and spoke into the microphone. Welcome, students! I'm pleased to announce the start of the first ever Fenwick Middle School Inventors Fair. This afternoon, you will be shown several inventions from your peers in the Academically Gifted program, from which one winner will be chosen by our judges at the end to represent our school next spring at the National Young Inventors Competition. First up is Angie Westphal's. I was relieved that she didn't start with me. Now I would be going last. The students were already murmuring about Sunny's absence, whispering her name so much that it sounded like a bleacher full of snakes. They were stunned that for the first time in 2 years she wouldn't be in the running to win an official school competition. I pictured her yellow duffel bag. It had been full when she hoisted it up and raced out of the gym a few minutes earlier. What was her unfinished invention? Peter, stop daydreaming and pay attention, Miss Schumacher whispered in my ear from behind, and I almost passed out from the espresso smell. Angie's invention turned out to be a sugar cube dispenser for her horse, so she could give it a treat mid-ride. Aside from Sally and the rest of the equestrian girls, the audience didn't seem all that interested. 1 down, 5 to go, I whispered to myself, as the students politely applauded at the end of her presentation. Next up was Carson. It turned out his invention wasn't in the styrofoam box, it was the styrofoam box. All he did was stick a freeze pack in it, along with a sandwich, a juice box, some chips, and a Snickers bar. He explained that styrofoam's really bad for the environment and doesn't decompose, and this way we could reuse it rather than crowd landfills with the stuff. And on top of this, styrofoam is really good at keeping things cool. Big whoop. No more soggy sandwiches, no more warm drinks, no more melted chocolate bars. The Carsonator not only saves the environment by recycling styrofoam, but it keeps your meals the way they ought to be, he said, and started noisily munching on the food samples. The lettuce in my sandwich is so crisp. Ooh, I'm getting a freezer burn sipping this juice box. Yow! I almost chipped a tooth biting into my frozen Snickers bar. Give me a break, I muttered, and Miss Schumacher glared at me. When Carson was finished, everyone in the stands clapped a little louder than they had for Angie, who blushed. Apparently she thought her horse claw was going to be sweeping the nation someday. I looked over at Miss Schumacher and the judges. Surely they'd deduct points given the fact that all Carson had done was tape 2 pieces of styrofoam together. The other inventions weren't even as good as that one, believe it or not. Lee had cut out 2 sides of a milk carton, stapled a garbage bag to one end, and fastened a broom handle to the top. It's called the leaf picker-upper, she said. This way you can rake your leaves, and they automatically go in the trash bag, so you have one less step to do. I looked over at the judges, and they were scribbling notes, probably pointing out that, basically, Lee's invention was promoting obesity because people would get fatter by not having to do the extra step when raking the yard. I don't even remember Courtney's or Sam's invention, and the worst was easily Graham's. Like Carson, he didn't even invent anything, really. According to him, his toothbrush was a toothbrush for toothbrushes. He called it the T2, which you'd use to clean your toothbrush after you brush your teeth. Now you don't have to go into the bathroom wanting to clean your teeth and find that your toothbrush has a speck of old chicken in the bristles from your last meal. Gross! Someone in the audience shouted. And so now your toothbrushes will last longer, because dentists say it's important to not only take care of your teeth, but also your toothbrushes. Graham's voice trailed off, and to be honest, I kind of felt bad for him. I couldn't believe how lame these inventions were. All semester, these kids had been working so hard on them, and this was the best they had to offer? I was excited to finally give my presentation. It had come down to this. This was my moment, my chance to win over my classmates, my chance to guarantee I wouldn't get kicked out of tag, and on top of that, I'd defeated Sunny just by even participating since she'd already quit. But I kind of wished she was there to see it. I wanted to see the look on her face when I unveiled what me and Drew had decided to call Safe Souls. Finally, for once she'd have to admit, at least to herself, that I was actually better at something than her. And now, last but not least, we have Peter Lee, Miss Schumacher announced. She was sipping her espresso and didn't seem as excited about the competition as she had to start, thanks to Graham's T2. Well, all that was about to change, I thought. I stood up and carried my bag up to the podium. Good afternoon, everybody. What I've done is fix the problem that all athletes have. How many of you hate having to take off your ice skates or soccer cleats or golf shoes before you walk to your parents' car? Almost everyone raised their hands. As I whipped off the blanket, everyone leaned forward to get a look. I glanced over at the judges, who were craning their necks trying to see my prototype. I call them Safe Souls, and what you do is simply step into them after you play your sports. That way you can walk normally in your hockey skates or soccer cleats the rest of the day. You can ride your bike in your golf shoes, walk the dog in your ice skates, go ballroom dancing in your soccer cleats, with no risk of accidentally killing yourself and others. Students oohed and awed, and even Miss Schumacher was smiling. Now for a demonstration, my assistant Drew will show you how it works, I said, and Drew climbed out of the stands and joined me up on the platform. I placed the Safe Souls on his feet as he put on his ice skates. Drew then stepped into the foamy replacement soles, and everyone cheered. The foam was too weak, though, so basically Drew had to balance on his skates and walk real gingerly so the soles didn't fall off. Luckily, the blades had dug into the actual soles a little, and they stayed on, just barely. People stopped cheering. It looked like he was walking on stilts. I sat him down. Okay, that's the demonstration, I said quickly. You know, historically, we've never been that good at demonstrations, Drew whispered as we listened to the scattered applause. Tell me about it, I whispered back. Luckily, everyone else's inventions were horrible. Miss Schumacher picked up the mic. Okay, now I'll tally the votes from the judges, and we'll find out which young inventor is going to represent the school at the national competition this spring, she said. I figured even though our demonstration hadn't gone perfectly, our Safe Souls were the obvious choice. But a minute later, she returned to the podium and said, and the winner is Carson Santiago for his invention, the Carsonator. Everyone cheered, and when the bell rang, the students raced out of the gym as if it was on fire. Drew came over and put a hand on my shoulder. Are you upset? he asked. Weirdly, no, I admitted. I guess it happened so fast that I couldn't quite believe it at first, but then, as it started to sink in that we'd lost, I was surprised to find out why I wasn't feeling crushed. I sat there trying to figure out why I felt so calm about it. I mean, my fate had just been sealed in an instant. I was going to get kicked out of the tag program and probably flunk out of school altogether. I hadn't won the competition. I hadn't beaten Sunny, even though she'd handed me the victory on a platter by not even participating. And me and Drew were going to be stuck being nobodies for the rest of our lives. And yet, it didn't really bother me like it should have. Fact is, instead of feeling bummed that I'd lost, I couldn't stop wondering what the deal was with Sunny. Peter, may I speak with you for a moment? Miss Schumacher said. Drew motioned that he'd meet me over by the double doors. The reason we didn't choose your invention, which was my personal favorite, was because the invention already exists, unfortunately. Really? Mr. Tinsley said so. He has some for his golf shoes. But styrofoam coolers already exist, too. It's more that he's recycling styrofoam that the judges appreciated. I sighed. I guess I'm not an inventor after all. Quite the contrary, she said. You honestly invented something that already exists. This is proof that you're thinking creatively. You just have a knack for it. So you're saying I was just born in the wrong century? I asked, thinking about the time machine me and Drew were probably going to invent when we got older. I suppose. Anyway, good work. I'm proud that you were able to do this even though you missed some classes. Now get to your bus. Drew and I didn't talk much on the walk home. He was probably debating land skiing to New Hampshire again. Well, I couldn't stop picturing Sunny's duffel bag. I needed to see what her invention looked like. It was all I could think about, and so when he asked me if I wanted to hang out in Corbett Canyon until dinner, I shook my head. Maybe later, I said. Sunny was already practicing the flute when I got home. I figured I could sneak into her bedroom upstairs and take a peek. She stopped playing but kept looking at her sheet music. Did you win? She asked. Carson won with the stupid styrofoam thing. I'm in a bad mood. I think I need to be alone right now, I said, pretending to be really upset. It felt weird that I was having to pretend to be upset. I went upstairs, stood outside my room, and slammed the door shut, then waited a few seconds for her flute to start playing again. Then I pushed her bedroom door open really quietly and snuck inside. The yellow duffel bag was by the closet in the corner. I crept over to it. I took extra soft steps because her bedroom was directly over the living room, so it ended up taking me almost 5 minutes to get to the corner. I bent over and slowly unzipped the duffel bag, and what I saw inside made me gasp. It was Sunny's invention, and it was incredible, way cooler than my safe soles. It was all chrome, with plastic buttons on it, and some sort of round thing on it, and a tray that came out, and a big red power button. It even had a plug in the back. I touched the side of the machine, and it was smooth, perfect. I sighed. Of course Sunny would end up making something so advanced that it looked futuristic, but why would she hide this from the inventors' competition then? Surely this would have easily won, whatever it was. What are you doing here? Sunny was standing in the doorway. I scrambled to my feet. I just wanted to see your invention, I replied. What is it? Her cheeks turned bright red for a second time that day. Get out of my room, she barked. What is that thing? I asked her. Duh, it's Miss Schumacher's espresso machine, she said. You made her a new espresso machine? She rolled her eyes. No, you moron, I stole it, she said. I grabbed it during the inventor's fair. I turned it over and saw that engraved on the bottom it read, Made in China. But you don't drink espresso, I said. Why would you steal it? She sighed, then went over to the closet and slid the door open, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. On the shelves were several cell phones, Trent's basketball, Carson's scientific calculator, a clump of barrettes, diaries, Sally's horseshoe keychain, a stack of books, a pair of ballet shoes, a Nalgene water bottle, a handful of cotton scarves. Because I'm the thief of Fenwick Middle, she said. Da-da-da.